strap in, Nathan. I'm about to go into story time here.
Okay, story time.
Okay. Here's story time. Yeah. Strap in. And here's why I say that. At any other time during the year, I don't feel like my understanding and knowledge of what's going on in the world of sports is on equal par with the national guys and especially the local guys who have their sources and anything. But you know what? My sources are just as good as anybody else's sources when it comes to the draft and trying to figure out who is drafting who, right? So let's take, for example, the third pick in the draft, which was San Francisco. That was the most widely talked about pick, right? San Francisco moved up to number 3. What we knew for sure is Jacksonville was taking Trevor Lawrence and the Jets were taking Zach Wilson. Everybody knew that. Every mock draft was exactly the same, but where everything got messed up or changed was with the third pick, right? So you heard some people, and I'm going to use just one example. I'm just picking on him because I don't like him. But Colin Cowherd said he is 100% certain that the 49ers are taking Mac Jones. Okay? And he has his sources and he gave his explanation, and he was 100% certain that that was happening. Well, let me tell you something, Nathan. I have a source also. And my source called me earlier this week. Okay, and this is what he said. I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you who my source is because
Yeah,
you know
can't
you
give up your
can't give
source.
out
You
your
can't give
source.
up your source.
Right, right. So this is what he said. He called me earlier in this week, and he said, look here, I know who San Francisco is going to take. And I said, oh really? How is it that you know who San Fran is going to take? And he said, listen, my ex-wife's attorney, lawyer, right, who he said was an amazing attorney. That's why he was sitting in a one-bedroom apartment talking to me on a phone that had like 6.5 minutes left of time on it because he couldn't afford anything else. He must be a great attorney. Took him for more than half his money. So his ex-wife's attorney has a partner in the law firm, right? And this partner's daughter has a volleyball coach, right? And this volleyball coach has a landscaper who works at his house,
This is good.
right?
This is great.
Yeah. So this landscaper, right, last week or the week before last was actually in Vegas for this big landscaping convention, right? All the landscapers from around the country, I guess, go to this, maybe even around the world. So at this landscaping convention was a guy by the name of Stephen Toma. I think that's what his name was, right? So Stephen Toma happens to be the grandson of a guy by the name of George Toma. And if you've ever heard the name George Toma, he was like for decades and decades, he was like the NFL's grass guy, the guy not the weed guy, but the grass guy who
Takes care of the
took care
fields.
of all
Yeah.
the fields,
Okay.
right? He was the soup for all the Super Bowls, and he happened to be based in San Francisco. He took care of San Francisco's field, right? So the grandson was the current or is the current guy who takes care of the fields in San Francisco, right? So after the convention, a bunch of these guys were including the landscaper of the volleyball coach of the attorney's daughter, right? So they were all hanging out, having drinks and everything. And this guy's telling the boys, he says, look, I was at one of my landscaper guys from the company that I own was over at Kyle Shanahan's house working on his yard, right? And lo and behold, he's sitting there, and you know who comes out of the house?
Who comes out of the house,
Justin
Connor?
Justin Fields' sister's accountant comes out of the house, right? And and you know what he does? He looks at the landscaper and he does this. I don't know if you can see this. He does this like that. And the landscaper interpreted that as Trey Lance, not happening. We're not drafting this guy. That's what
You
he
mean Justin
interpreted
Fields?
that
Because it was
as.
Justin Fields' accountant's sister? No, it was Trey
No,
Lance's. Because you said
yeah,
Fields, it was
because he was saying
okay.
right, right, but he's saying Trey Lance not happening, as in Justin Fields is happening.
Okay.
So my source said, look, I'm 100% certain that San Francisco is drafting Justin Fields at number 3. And so I took that to heart all this week, and I said, Justin Fields is going 3rd because my source. Well, my source was wrong. And you know who else was wrong? Whoever Colin Cowherd's source is. And his source might have been Kyle Shanahan himself. But it's Lion season in the NFL.
Teams put a lot of smoke screens out there purposely.
And nobody knows anything, which is my point. Yep. Nobody knows anything. So I know as much as anybody out there when it comes to the draft. You can unbuckle your seatbelt. Story time is finished.